So we're about 4 weeks into the winter season, and this video is coming out a little later than usual because I wanted to avoid another Ojoto Bankankun situation from last season where I recommend something and it ends up not living up to the premise at all. I wanted to wait and check out at least a couple episodes of everything. At this point, I can confidently say that this is an amazing season, not quite as stacked as fall, but great nonetheless, and a lot of great stuff to talk about. As usual, I'm focusing on new shows, and just because something isn't here doesn't mean it's not good. With that said, let's get right into it. Alright, so starting us off at number 10, we've got Bucchigiri, which is MAPPA's first real departure in a while from their Hell's Trilogy Jump adaptations. And wow, I gotta say, I've been really impressed with this one. It's basically a modern interpretation of Aladdin in anime form, which I can't say I've seen done before. And it just works. The main character transfers to this new school that's full of and run by delinquents. He ends up meeting this cute, innocent looking girl among all the chaos, and her brother ends up being this crazy, strong delinquent. He then finds a genie lamp, and there's so much wacky and crazy stuff going on. It's a very anime-ass anime. It feels like a breath of fresh air. As you'd expect from a MAPPA show, the animation is top-notch, the art is nice and colorful, there's action, comedy. The comedy actually lands very well in this one, which is rare for anime. It's just kind of all over the place in the best possible way. Highly recommend checking this one out if you're looking for something different to watch. I feel like I say this every season, but it's true. I love this trend of villainous adaptations we've been getting lately. It seems like every season we have 2 to 3 of them, probably because of the success of Hamefra. This season is no exception. There's a few on this list, but the first we're going to be talking about is Villainous 99. Now, I wasn't familiar with this one going into the season, but it apparently has a pretty big fan base and is doing well on places like Reddit in the weekly karma rankings, which is cool. It sets itself apart from other villainous stories in a couple ways. The first is that they actually have an in-universe game opening, which I thought was a very nice touch. The other being that the main character, Yumiella, is extremely broken, and I'm talking about Ainz from Overlord levels of broken. But of course, she just wants to live a normal life out of the spotlight. In the original game, she's one of these secret bosses, and she just wants nothing to do with that lifestyle. But of course, it's anime, so that can't happen. She can't have this peaceful existence she wants. When people find out her level, everyone is in disbelief and sets out to prove that she's a liar, which actually ends up putting her in contact with the game's main characters. Now, another thing that really stuck out to me with this one is that the first episode starts out from the perspective of the game's main heroine, who is of course a side character in the anime. But since I came into the show completely blind, the ultimate reveal of the true main character was really cool. It also fleshed out those side characters who sometimes struggle to get development in otome adaptations. And I don't think that's a big spoiler or anything. Yumiella is literally in the key visuals. I just went into this completely blind, so it was a nice shock to me. The other big thing about the series is just how unfazed Yumiella is by everything. She has all these hilarious straight faces she makes. She's not one to smile a lot or be real emotional. Just imagine the straight-faced emoji as an anime girl. It's just a really funny show to watch so far, and I can't wait to see where this one goes. So like I said earlier, there's a lot of villainous stuff to talk about this season, and the next one we're going to be talking about is EliteAlice or Dr. Elise. This honestly might be the most unique villainous style show I've seen yet. The big thing with this story is it's a double isekai, so Elise lives this tyrannical lifestyle and is just a general asshole to everyone in her past life. She ends up getting isekai'd into our world. In the manhwa, it was Korea, but the anime switches it to Japan, and in order to make up for her past sins, she sets out to become a doctor and save lives. She ends up working her way up to be one of the top doctors in Japan before she gets in a plane crash on the way to a conference. After saving an injured survivor's life, she gets re-isekai'd back into her original world. Now, personally, this is the first time I've ever seen anything like that, and it kind of blew me away. I thought that was such a cool concept to get another chance at life in your original world using the skills that you've learned in an isekai. I also just love seeing strong, independent female characters. In her original world, she comes from a sheltered, noble background and kind of has to earn the respect of the male-dominated medical field when she goes back. Otherwise, she'll have to honor her previous engagement to be married to the emperor's son and become empress. But because this led to disaster last time around, she wants to do anything to avoid that. So there's some nice stakes. Elise is an interesting protagonist, and I like the focus on medical science, which is a nice departure from the usual demon lord and magic stuff in otome shows. I don't know what it is, but I feel like Korean authors just do better in general with this genre. Last year we had Raeliana, and now we've got this. I've seen some other well-regarded villainous manhwa as well, and it's part of a larger trend of Korean works getting anime adaptations, which we're seeing with Solo Leveling, Omnipotent Reader's Viewpoint, and several others lately, which is great for the medium. The foolish angel dances with the devil has been a pleasant surprise for me so far. Not gonna lie, I kind of thought this was a Tench-sama copy and paste, but it actually ended up being pretty original and taking a pretty fun and wacky twist. There's a war between heaven and hell going on, and an angel and demon find themselves at the same school, trying to make the other fall in love. While Amane may seem like the angel next door, she's more of a demon than anyone in hell. She basically ends up making Masatora her lapdog as they hunt his fellow devils. Now this one has some great comedy, surprisingly well done animation, and the chemistry between the two leads is just great. Seeing Amane try and portray herself as this really cute, innocent, ideal student while doing all this crazy stuff to Masatora and hiding her feelings for him is so funny. If you're a fan of Gabriel Dropout, Kaguya-sama, or even Rikakoi, I think you'll really like this one. It plays heavily into that will she or will he confess first trope with some nice fantasy elements and lovable characters. It's been criminally underrated on my anime list right now, but it is non-stop fun so far. Majo to Yaju, or The Witch and the Beast, is my literal dark horse of the season. I mean that literally. This show is really dark in terms of aesthetic and plot. You've got these two people who go around hunting witches and dealing with magical incidents. Ashaf, the cool, calm, collected mage, and Gedo, the hot, crass, brazen, and insanely strong assistant who just happens to be a guy in a girl's body. She was cursed by a witch and now has to hunt them all down to find the original witch who cursed her so she can break the spell. If that sounds familiar, it's because it feels very much like another undead girl murder farce, which was one of my favorite shows from last year, as I talked about in my top 10 of 2023 video, which by the way, you can check out now if you haven't. The character interactions between Gedo and Ashaf are very reminiscent of Sugaru, Aya, and Shizuku, and I'm loving the dark gothic vibe that the show has going on. They do a great job of showing how brutal and evil the witches of this world are. There's this whole magical organization dedicated to hunting them down, and I love that at least from the cities we've seen so far, there's different ways certain cities interact with the witches. Some have them as protectors, some are fearful of them because they're on killing sprees. This is just such a cool and interesting world. I know the manga is highly regarded for its art and story, and I'm already hooked, so I can't wait to see where this goes. Bringing us into the top 5, Dungeon Meshi marks Trigger's first post-Edge Runners anime, and this one could not be more different in terms of tone. Instead of dark and depressing, this is a pretty wholesome and upbeat story about a group of adventurers who set out in a dungeon to save the party leader's sister. In this world, being eaten by a dragon doesn't mean you're dead automatically, so there's still time to save the MC's sister. Of course, in order to go into the deepest parts of the dungeon, you gotta be able to eat, right? So basically the story, at least where the anime is, focuses on the cast learning how to safely cook and eat monsters. They're guided by a dwarf named Senshi who has a lot of experience down there. But what's even cooler than that is that the show feels like environmental responsibility, the anime. So Senshi teaches them how every monster in the dungeon contributes to the ecosystem and forms an important part of the dungeon itself. There's an emphasis on not wasting anything they find, whether it's using poop as fertilizer, dead golems as soil to harvest vegetables, or something else. There's so much detail in this world that we don't see much in cooking shows. I'm not normally a fan of these. I did love Shokugeki no Soma for obvious reasons, but I didn't like Tondemo Skill from last year at all. So far, I don't think it's quite as good as people have been hyping it up to be. I think a lot of that is from manga readers who are excited for stuff in the future, but it's definitely a fun show and I see the potential. And it has the cutest elf of the season in Marcel. Trigger are as usual doing wonders on the production, and the Seiyu cast is excellent. Definitely worth checking this one out on Netflix. I feel like Sasaki Topi should win an award for the most genres packed into one opening episode. I mean, that premiere was all over the place in the best possible way, and I'm glad I went into it completely blind. I thought this would be a cute slice of life show about a man and his pet bird bonding, which really appealed to me because I'm not a pet person in general, but I did have a lot of pet parakeets growing up, so I could finally relate to one of these shows. The story does a total 180 at about the 15-minute point, and it opens itself up as a much more compelling and bigger story when Sasaki finds out that P is a visitor from another world. Sasaki ends up being able to go back and forth between worlds selling stuff, and at that point I was pretty sold already. I loved Roken 8 from last year where Mitsuha would buy things on Earth and sell it for a lot of money in the isekai world to get rich. But then things get even crazier with Sasaki getting roped into this government agency who solve magical incidents on Earth with the very cute Hoshizaki who's voiced by Takahashi Rie. So yeah, it's all over the place and it feels like we got 3 different series at once, but it just works. Trust me, it's good. Ton of cute girls in this one, a unique story and a lot of mystery, and I'm very much looking forward to more of this. And it's my contender for the best first episode of the year so far. All right, boys, we've done it. We've reached the zenith of this medium, the peak, the magnum opus of Japanese anime is finally here. It's Mahoako, or Gushing Over Magical Girls, which is airing uncensored right now on High Dive. It's already one of the very few, if not the first erotica adaptations that has, in my opinion, surpassed the manga. Basically, to sum this one up, you have Utena, who is a shy and reserved girl with an obsession over her local Maho Shoujo group. One day she gets offered to become their villainous or arch nemesis. She accepts that and sets in motion one of the greatest plots in anime history. Every day Utena battles the Trace Magia, which usually results in some heavy BDSM stuff. A lot of spanking, chains, and every little degen fetish you can think of. Now, I myself am of course not into BDSM, but from what I've been told and seen online, the story is actually pretty accurate to the type of dynamics that you would see in a BDSM relationship, and is pretty well done from a psychological standpoint. Now, the manga is censored, so there's no nipples or anything, but the anime on High Dive is straight up uncensored, which actually enhances a lot of the scenes. It's somewhat monster of the week in the very early going, with the girls getting beat up by Utena and tortured, but then we start seeing some actual development from Utena and the girls. If you're one of those tourists who's completely against fan service or characters being sexualized, this is your worst nightmare. If you're like me, however, a man of exquisite taste, this is as good as it gets. Seventh Time Loop might go down as one of the best, if not the best villainous show ever. I actually found out about this series in Barnes & Noble last year, but didn't pick it up, which I really regret. We've seen the reborn with an opportunity to right your wrongs trope a few times lately, but we haven't seen someone do it multiple times yet. In this story, as the name suggests, Riche has gone through 6 full lives, dying in war in each of them, and in this 7th life, she's determined to make a difference. If you think about it, it's a lot more like Higurashi than any of the other villainous shows, but what really stands out to me in this one are the facts that Riche has gone through 6 other full lives, so she has a wealth of experience in a variety of fields. She's been a merchant, a knight, a healer, you name it. But I also love how well written Riche is as a character. She's a very strong-willed woman who refuses to let anyone dictate her life. She's not chasing after a man or defined by her romantic relationships. She just wants to live her life on her terms and escape her tragic fate. Of course, it is shoujosei, so you know there's going to be some romance in here, but it's not like traditional romances where the girl is swooning over the guy instantly. Arnold and Riche are 2 very complete individuals on their own who end up being attracted to one another, which isn't just good anime writing, but also good real-life relationships as well. The themes of female empowerment and feminism are very strong in this one, but it's not overpowering. It feels believable and makes sense within the framework of the story. Oh yeah, and Arnold, that love interest, he's the guy who actually led to Riche's death in all of her previous loops. So yeah, this one is a lot of fun and a great watch. I'm really enjoying it and highly recommend it. And finally, at number 1, we've got my current anime of the season, Yubisaki to Renren, or A Sign of Affection. Realistically, this is the best show of the season and it's not particularly close for me. I'm sure it's gonna be one of my top 10 of the year as well. It is a beautiful and very well written story about a deaf girl in college who meets a guy on the train and ends up falling in love with him. Now, what really does it for me with this one is how it handles both the disability aspect with Yuki being deaf, as well as how emotionally intelligent characters are in this one. It is so refreshing to see characters acting like normal people for a change. Itsuyomi is this really popular and handsome guy who travels a lot and loves learning languages. Basically, he's just like me. When he meets Yuki, he finds a world that he's not used to, sign language. As someone who loves connecting with other people, he wants to get to know her and truly form a bond, so he starts learning sign language. And we see the 2 of them gradually getting closer through their hangouts and whatnot. Yuki herself has kind of been sheltered by her friends and family, which is kind of understandable. I mean, if you had a disabled child, you'd want them to be safe, but you still have to allow them to grow and make their own mistakes, just like any other child. So we kind of see Yuki beginning to stay out late, go on dates, coming into her own as an adult, and it's a very heartwarming story. Now, they're not together in the anime yet, but it's shoujo. We know it's going to happen at some point, right? So the main thing with these stories is establishing a relationship between characters that isn't cliche or cheesy, but that actually makes sense and is how normal people would handle this stuff. The author really understands social interaction, and it shows in this story. We're only like 3 episodes in and I'm already hooked. It's such a wholesome and cute story about 2 people going outside of their comfort zones to connect with one another and grow as people. A story I think we can all learn something from. Now, as usual, there's some shows that I really like that didn't quite make the list because of how I'm feeling at the time of writing. So just quickly, my honorable mentions of some shows that you might like. The Wrong Way to Use Healing Magic is another isekai, but it's a group isekai where the main character gets summoned to another world along with his 2 older classmates. The 2 older ones end up becoming knights while he's revealed to have an affinity for healing magic. He's taken off to train with the obligatory seasonal mommy-dami waifu Rose to refine his skills, and what can I say? It's a blast to watch. There's comedic moments, great characters, it doesn't take itself too seriously, and it's just really fun to watch. It's kind of different from the other isekai, I promise, so check it out. Fluffy Paradise is, as the name suggests, the cutest show this season. It is truly pure bliss, a great way to wind down after a long week on Sundays. A girl gets reincarnated after dying of overwork and is given an affinity with animals. Basically, she's able to connect with any animal in the world, and I mean any animal. That means legendary dragons that can level kingdoms. So while she herself isn't too overpowered, she can control the most OP beings in this world, which initially creates some issues between she and the royal family, but at this point that's been resolved and we're just seeing her be cute. Highly recommend checking this one out if you just want something to de-stress with after a long week, or you just like cute girls doing cute things. Kekkon Yubiwa, The Tales of the Wedding Ring, was actually my most anticipated show of the season once I found out about it about 2 months ago. I ended up reading the manga after the first episode a couple weeks ago though, so I kind of know all the twists and turns, so it's not been quite as exciting to me as these other ones. Still a great show. Best way to describe it is it's Lord of the Rings with ecchi fan service and hot girls. The main character finds out his childhood friend is actually from another world. He ends up following her back to that world and assuming the role of the Ring King. He has to marry 5 princesses to defeat the Abyss King and get their rings. It's actually a pretty well written lore in this one too. There's some cool world building, hot girls, some decent action as well. But I don't know, I just ended up putting EliteAlice over it because that story was a little fresher to me and I liked those episodes a little bit more. Still love this one though and highly recommend checking it out. Then rounding us off, there's Mr. Villain's Day Off, which is, again, as the name suggests, about a bad guy going around doing different things on his days off. It's a very slice of life anime in the truest sense, but it is a very calming and relaxing show. The villain begins to start to like Earth and not want to destroy it because of his love for pandas and the other cute stuff that we have here on Earth. So we kind of see him go from being hell-bent on the destruction of the planet to falling in love with it and wanting to preserve it. This and Fluffy Paradise have us eating really good on Sundays. Whew, okay, I went a little longer than I intended, but I hope y'all were able to find some new anime to watch this season. There's a ton of it. Like I said, it's not quite as stacked as last season, but still a ton of good anime to watch. Let me know in the comments what you're liking most right now, and be sure to subscribe if you're not already for more anime content. Thanks so much for watching. Again, thanks for 1,000 subscribers. See y'all in the next one.